Yeah, the Ninja Challenge is back again as one of the most annoying challenges in the game, although slightly improved. You may know I have history with the Ninja Challenge, but I'll spare you the details. All you need to know is that I made a fat 30-minute guide for it back in Black Ops 3, and a lot of that still applies to the S&D portion of this challenge. If you want to subject yourself to watching that big old thing, you can, because I won't be covering S&D at all in this video. Thankfully, the challenge has changed. Now you're also able to complete it in Heist by extracting the cache as the last alive, with enemies still alive. That does make it easier, in my opinion. Still not easy. The worst part about the challenge always was, and still is, that your team has to be dead, which you can't really control. And one very important stipulation, to be considered the last alive in Heist, you cannot have downed teammates. They have to be fully dead, and I can prove that with a clip later on. I also want to add that I've heard some reports of this challenge being broken. People both in Heist and S&D showing clips or saying that they seemingly did it correctly and it didn't count, as if this challenge needed another layer of frustration. I don't know how to diagnose that, I'm sorry. Hopefully they're able to fix any challenge inconsistencies or bugs. If you want to hold off on this challenge and revisit it in a couple months, feel free. All I can tell you is that I never encountered those problems. When I did it 5 times in Heist, it counted all 5 times, and that isn't a PC thing. People are able to complete it on all systems. It just seems like sometimes it didn't count for people. I'll take another look at that later, but I don't have anything concrete. So I'll jump right into the main idea of the strategy I used to complete it, then I'll show you my 5 successful attempts, and then we'll get into some failed attempts and all the other details of what to do when things don't exactly go according to plan, because they won't. I don't think I need a flowchart this time though. This video may look quite long, but that's just because I'll be going through a ton of examples. We got time, let's hang out and talk about Ninja for a while. First off, there isn't any class setup or ideal specialist because it's Heist mode, those don't matter. On the first round, it also doesn't really matter. If you aren't strictly going for the challenge, you could buy a MOG or a launcher or some light armor. Personally, I just saved to put that 500 towards the next round to help set myself up for the challenge. You should easily have 750 for the next round, and the first thing I'd recommend buying is the Secret Shock Drone. It's a surprise tool that will help us later, so hold on to it. Don't use it until the end game scenario, which we'll get to in a bit. After buying that drone, next I recommend buying a primary weapon of choice. It can be anything. I typically bought the GKS because it's fairly cheap, and I like the mobility of an SMG. It doesn't kill that fast, but it's accurate and versatile at longer range. Then my next purchases are going to be these 2 mobility perks because I want to get the cash as quickly as possible. And finally, after that, aside from maybe a red dot if I have some extra, I just rebuy armor every round, either the light or the heavy armor. I don't like buying medium because the armor HP goes 50, 100, 150, but the price goes 500, 1500, 2000, so the light and heavy is just a better deal. Therefore, even if I can afford medium, I like to buy light and then get heavy in the following round, unless it's the last round, of course. So that's the rough buying order I use, and of course you can make some variation of that, but as soon as you have that shock drone, you can begin attempting this method. Off spawn, I run straight for the cache to try to grab it before anyone even gets to it, and if you see the red smoke of the extraction point, take note of where it is. That can be good to know for later. If the health and ammo packs aren't directly on the way, I won't even pick them up. It's a mad dash for the cache. That does depend on the map and the spawn location of the cache though. Some of them are right around the corner and easy to grab, but some are way out in the open, and in that case, don't rush out there to die. Only rush in to snatch it up if there's a good chance at getting away. If not, let your team fight over it for a bit before finding your chance to grab it. Assuming you now have the cache, which I didn't find very difficult, that should be the easy part. Now just run back into your spawn to a safe place and allow everyone else to fight it out. And you can also start moving to somewhere near the exfil point, but not too close. The ideal situation is you end up in a 1v1, but this is where you don't have a whole lot of control. It depends on how good your team is versus theirs. If your team is way too good and you just sweep every round, you'll never get an opportunity. Vice versa, if your team is getting smashed, you at least have a chance in a 1v5, but not a very good one. That said, you do have more control over the player count than back in S&D because of the downing system. If you run into an enemy and have to defend yourself, you can choose to leave them alive and hope they get revived if you think the enemy team needs some help. And conversely, as much as I hate to say it, you don't have to revive people on your team unless you want some help narrowing it down to a 1v1, like if you're in the 2-on-5. Anyway, do what you can to try to keep the number of people alive roughly even as best you can, assuming your teammates are eventually defeated, which is what you need. Your goal is now to make it a 1v1. Maybe it already is, that would be awesome, but usually that's easier said than done. At this stage, only downing and not finishing people is completely fine. By 1v1, I mean one enemy left standing. If anything, not finishing people off might be a good idea, because if the last guy decides to waste time reviving, you might get more extraction time. If you try to extract the cache while 4 enemies are still up, they're all going to rush you, and your odds are not good. The announcer tells people when the cache is being extracted, and the extraction circle has no fog of war, as in it will show your red dot on the minimap. And extracting takes a long time, so stealth is rarely an option. If you get it to a 1v1, this is where the shock mine comes in, by hopefully stalling the last guy long enough to finish the extraction. The seeker mine will not lock onto someone who is downed, only someone who is up. For this to work though, he can't react fast enough to escape the shock trap. You really need the full duration. And he also can't be right next to you, because even a full shock duration is only long enough for about half an extraction, so even more luck has to come into play. But that's the general idea. You get yourself to a 1v1 with the cache, and use the shock mine to hopefully buy you that little extra time to get it done. If that sounds a bit outlandish, well it is, but to give you a better feel for it, I'll now show you my 5 successful attempts in action, as well as a few failed ones that came very close, and why they failed. If you want to know what you're getting into in terms of time commitment, I was lucky to get the first one within an hour on the first day, then it took about 9 hours of solid heist the next day to get the other 4, with the last one taking way longer than the others. That wasn't helped by the constant game crashes on the map loading screen though, so let's just say 8 to 10 hours total as a ballpark to get this thing done. It's worth noting, maybe you could do it much faster if you had a full team of super dedicated challenge hunting friends who were all working together to kill the team down to 1, and then everyone killed themselves or distracted the last enemy as you started the extraction. But since most people challenge hunt solo, I did do it solo as well. So here's the first one. I joined the game in progress, so I had plenty of money. I didn't exactly follow my buying order because I went straight for that heavy armor, but I did get the shock drone and a primary. I ran straight for the cache and grabbed it. There wasn't any fight over it. Then ran back to the spawn, which was luckily near the extraction zone. Now I just had to wait and hope for my team to die. I was eventually discovered back here, had to defend myself, and I ended up deciding to finish the kill because that made it into a 2v2. Hopefully my teammate will not be good enough to kill both the other guys. I reposition after that kill to put my teammate between me and the remaining enemies. Luckily, he does go down, and I down the guy that killed him. I run away a bit because I need my teammate to get finished off. That happens, and now I have my 1v1. I deploy the shock drone immediately, which was maybe not the best idea. This was early on when I was still putting together the strategy, but by pure luck, it worked out. When I push into the zone, the last guy falls back. I tapped the zone expecting him to push back out, but my shock drone ends up turning around and going back the other way, which tells me he apparently decided to run all the way around, which is fantastic. The shock drone goes up there and connects with the guy when I'm halfway done, and you can see where the drone is and how much time it's buying me. There is no way I would have had enough time without it, and by the time he breaks out, it is just barely too late. I take a little damage, but that's the first ninja done. You can see how much luck had to come into play there. The fact that my team died, the fact that he decided to run all the way around for some reason, and that he didn't hit the QuickTime on the shock drone. That's one reason why I wanted to get this done somewhat early, because people will only get better at countering the shock drone over time. If you find out everyone is countering them, you could also try a 9-bang to stall people out, but that takes a lot more precision in where and when you throw it. Anyway, ninja number 2, this is late in the game. I have all my gear, so I pick up the heavy armor again. I see the extraction zone is on our side, take note of that for later. The cache is in one of the spawns where it isn't as easy to run in and grab it, although from this side of the map I could have gone through the middle tube. I don't know what I was doing, but after it seemed safe enough, I grabbed it and headed back to the spawn. It seemed like most of the fight was happening elsewhere, so I hung out back in the spawn for a while. It was a fairly even game. I saw there was an enemy on the extraction zone there. That's not good. That's what I'm talking about with the fog of war revealing enemies on the zone. But then my last teammate goes down. It's now or never. I just have to hope they finish him off, because those two enemies are going to be heading back to the zone now to hunt me down. Thankfully, they do finish him off. I toss down the drone immediately because there was that guy here just a moment ago, and it should track down whoever's closest anyway. There's no reason to throw it down later. It does connect with someone far down the left lane, but it wasn't a 1v1, so I know I have one other guy to deal with, and he finally shows himself. I am a massive idiot though, and my heart is racing, so it takes me a while to pinpoint where he was shooting me from, but I see him and somehow take him down on 3 HP. The extraction is almost over now. You can hear in the distance my shock drone finally releasing their last alive, and that is another successful ninja thanks to the shock drone. I definitely couldn't have handled a 2v1. Again, a ton of luck there, like how the guy who was at the zone ran away to look for a fight instead of just guarding it, and how the guy didn't escape the shock drone again, and how the guy who found me didn't have the best aim and didn't have any armor left, while I had purchased heavy armor in that round. That was the only reason I survived, so that can absolutely be a game changer. On to ninja number 3. I think these are fun to go through. If you're bored of watching them, that's why there are timestamps below. For some reason, this game started as a 1v5, but I never saw any enemies. I just grabbed the cash and went back to the zone. Maybe they all crashed. Loading the map, I figured. Easy ninja for me. No, just kidding, that didn't work. Too bad. The ninja was actually later in that game. On a more populated round, the cache was in an easy spot, so I ran over there to grab it right away and ran back to safety. Making my way over to the extraction site now. I got there, but it was still only a 2v2, and this was one of those awkward rounds where my teammate was being a good teammate, protecting me, and surely wondering why the hell I wasn't extracting the damn cache. He started to take some fire, and I was hopeful he'd go down, but no, more waiting. It took another 30 seconds for the enemies to arrive at the site, and for my teammate to valiantly go down. Now, what the hell do I do in this situation? I guess pray to the challenge hunting gods, because as I said in the strategy part, a shock drone can only buy you about half of an extraction time. Both of these guys are right on top of the zone. This ain't gonna work, but whatever, let's see what happens. I try to take down the battery and actually fail, throw my shock drone early and get on the zone. Luckily the battery just stood there in confusion as I took them down. Now there's the issue of the Nomad locked by the shock drone, but after he ran on the spot for a moment, it seems like I shocked him into the Shadow Realm, zapped him so hard his game crashed, I guess. And Heist is a little buggy. You can see by the scoreboard it removed the last guy from the game, but it now thinks the downed person is considered alive, so the round didn't end, and that counted as a ninja. If you thought the previous attempts were lucky, that was a whole new level. I don't expect anyone will be able to recreate that, but I guess the lesson there is, even if it seems hopeless, you may as well try. This fourth ninja is a very unique one. It was on the first round where I bought nothing at all, starting as a 3v4, no real strategy coming into play here. With enough luck, anything is possible, and also hours of failure in between each of these clips, keep that in mind. So I ran up to the cache area here. It wasn't an easy one to grab, so I hung back a bit, let people fight it out, tried to do some damage because we were at a disadvantage. I figured I'd be a nice guy and revive a teammate, but never mind, the challenge gods have my back once again. They know I shouldn't be giving in to the guilt and reviving. At this point, 2 enemies are up, and I saw both of them on the map killing my last teammate way back in that building, so I realized, hey, they're pretty far away. I can grab the cache and run back to the site, and I might have a chance at this. Because, luckily, that's the word of the video, the site was near our spawn, and I remembered running past it earlier. So I ran straight back to it to start the extraction and hoped for the best. No drone, no armor, nothing. My saving grace was that they focused on reviving a downed teammate for the extra money instead of running to the objective right away. That extra time proved to be all I needed, as one enemy reached me in time, thankfully win that gunfight because he was low, and by the time a second guy reaches me, we only hit each other once, and it doesn't matter because that round is over. A true ninja clutch extraction 1v4, probably the way they meant for it to go in their heads when they designed the challenge, but it sure does take a whole lot of luck for the round to go down that way. Well, it just goes to show, always be looking for that opportunity, even if you aren't set up with all your gear. Here we are on the 5th and final ninja. This one truly was a miracle. I was getting desperate on a big dry streak. This is a good example of adapting the strategy when you need to. We did have one round on the board, but we were typically getting thoroughly bodied in this game, usually getting stomped 5-0 or 4-0. So here I ran in to grab the cache, lost my armor right away, and said, screw it, this isn't a great match for getting a ninja. The enemy team has been so aggressive, I'll never get enough time to extract after my team is dead. I thought about waiting a little little bit, but figured they were already closing in. I'll just start right now, and worst case scenario, we all die anyway, or I win the round with teammates still alive, whatever, I'll go do that. I see 2 or 3 enemies swarming my teammates at mid, which is good, and then one enemy directly behind me who wipes out both of my teammates who were protecting me. Suddenly this went from a 4v4 to a near perfect scenario, and I'm already halfway done with the extraction. So now I throw down that shock drone, assuming it will turn around and zap the guy who's directly behind me, and I can keep watching in front of me here. That happens, it goes back there and eventually finds somebody to shock. At the perfect time, some enemies swarm in from mid and kill the last of my teammates who were downed. So just in time, I'm all alone with one guy stunned by the drone, and the extraction is done. That's Ninja 5 out of 5. Again, so much damn luck went into that for my teammates to all die the way they did, and for the enemies to take the time to eliminate them completely before coming to me for some reason. Absolutely perfect. But those lucky situations are bound to happen eventually, and believe you me, there was plenty of failure in between each of those attempts. A few of which I've selected to show you now because I think they have some learnable lessons. So let's get into some failed attempts, looking at why things went wrong and some other strategies you can use. But of course I'll move faster than the 5 successes because this has already been pretty long. First, I said at the beginning I'd show an example that demonstrates how teammates have to be all the way dead and not just downed for you to be considered the last alive. Well, first of all, it only comes up on the screen saying 1vx when your teammates die completely, so that's a clue. But just to prove it, here's a ninja attempt where I started the extraction early because I was so outnumbered, I couldn't have 5 people rushing me. So you can see I end up becoming the last man standing, but it still only says 4v5 and then later 3v5. What I maybe should have attempted to do in that situation is a strategy I haven't mentioned yet and was never one that worked for me in a successful attempt, but is what I'll call edging the extraction for lack of a better term. I'm calling it that because you're on the edge of the circle, obviously. Anyway, I'm talking about keeping the extraction nearly completed by backing off the circle as soon as it's almost done and waiting until the conditions are met and your team is dead. Just be aware of that potential strategy. You can start extracting and step off the zone and your progress will not immediately disappear, it'll just start falling slowly back down, which can be a good way to stall for time if you need it. Like that situation I was just in, there was even an earlier round in that same game where I tried to use it. I was hoping that this enemy might be good enough to kill my remaining 2 teammates, and I was starting the extraction but not letting it complete until that ended up not working out. So keep that in mind. However, it's also possible that doing that is one of the things that is making the challenge not count for some people, based on the clips I've been shown of when it counted and when it didn't, bringing it back to the bug thing. It might need you to do the full extraction from start to finish without interruption, although in my second success I did step off it very briefly, and it did work. Like I said at the start, I really have no idea when it comes to the bugs because it didn't happen to me, so if you have no other option, you may as well try to do that strategy to buy you some time for your team to die, but just be warned, it's possible that may not count. I wish I knew more. Well, here's a game where I grabbed the cash right away on the first round, and in a 1v5, got surprisingly close to a successful ninja before I got swarmed. You'll notice I never got a ninja on firing range, even though I played it all the time, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Smaller maps are generally a bad thing for ninja extractions. You want people to be spread out as far as possible, but on a small map where they can reach you from anywhere, not ideal, so vote for bigger maps if you can. Then later in that game, this last round might have been close, but I got soft and made the mistake of reviving a teammate to help me win the round, and then when he died I revived the other teammate, even though I was in a 1v1 with a shock drone. What the hell was I thinking, trying to be a good team player? So learn from my mistakes, that's not what you're supposed to do. He ends up winning the round, so I screwed up. Remember to be an asshole to do this challenge. Thanks Treyarch, very cool. I have plenty of firing range clips where it just fell apart because of it being a small map, just getting overwhelmed by everyone at once. Here's a time where it felt like I had to ditch the extraction halfway in hopes of coming back to it. Got most of the way there, but there were just too many enemies all around me. That, and I am not very good at this game. Here's just an example of how a Seeker Shock Drone alone does not buy you enough time. I waited for my last teammate to die, he went down so I rushed in to take one more guy out, got him down, left the last guy alive. What I should have done here was run around to the left, hoping he would chase me down and leave the extraction site behind so I could shock him far away, but I was afraid he would revive teammates, so I stayed there, threw down the shock drone. It got him right away when I wasn't even on the zone yet, so there was no way I would have enough time, but who knows, maybe his game would crash. And you'll see that no, that did not give me anywhere near enough time, even with the full shock duration. Unfortunately, he didn't waste a bunch of time running around looking for a health pack, so no ninja for me. The shock drone alone is not enough. You need a head start on the extraction or for them to be far away from the site. This clip shows a very similar thing where I did decide to run all the way around in a 1v4, got it down to a 1v1, and went for the extraction, throwing down that shock drone because I didn't know where the last guy was. I was just hoping he was somewhere far away. No, he was right on top of the zone. So that was doomed to fail, and he got me with the hip fire anyway because I didn't have any heals on me. Here's a clip where I was an AFK terrible person for a whole last minute not extracting the cash. I'm sure my sniper friend here next to me hated me as much as I was annoyed at him for being a good teammate and protecting me instead of dying like he should. When he died, I needed to get the 1v1. I got one down. I'm thinking, where are these other two people? Then this oblivious guy jumped by me, and here's where I messed up. I had already pressed to throw down the drone before I registered. That dude just jumped by me for some reason. So I tossed that down early, and now I desperately had to try to take out that crash player who was even on low health, but I screwed that up really bad, so the shock drone targets him instead of the other last guy. That's why I say you want to get it to a 1v1 before using the drone, ideally, and I did show some exceptions to that because it's not a hard and fast rule, but that was one game where if I had killed that crash before deploying the drone, that may very well have been a success, because the last guy was around that corner. He ended up deciding to run around the left and flank me. If the drone had got him while he was behind there, kind of like the very first success clip I showed, that might have worked out, but I panicked and deployed the drone too early. Finally, here's an interesting one where I didn't grab the cash initially, but took down the enemies as they were extracting it. Almost finished that guy, but remembered what I was trying to do, ran away to let my other teammates die, then swooped back in to grab the cash and start the extraction. This was looking pretty good. If the last guy would just finish off my downed teammate and then get zapped, this could work. But instead they did the smart thing and came right for me, and the drone just rolls right past them for some reason. I don't think there's a perk you can buy in Heist that makes you avoid detection from those things. Tac Mask just does the QuickTime event for you. So I don't know what that was about, but either way my teammate wasn't dead, so it wouldn't have worked anyway, and as a consolation prize, at least Jimmy Jam Jr. liked it.
Man's a young guy. Dude clutched up crazy, dude.
That's all the failure examples I selected to show, although of course I have hundreds of failures that play out similarly, either my team just winning or being overwhelmed by too many enemies. Here at the end I will briefly mention Search and Destroy and why I chose Heist to focus on instead. There are a couple advantages of SND, one being you can camp in the back of the map instead of putting yourself in danger to grab the cash, so as long as your team isn't too great, you can get yourself into that 1vx situation fairly reliably. You can also build your own class with stealth perks and a suppressor instead of needing to buy stuff. Defusing a bomb can be done stealthily with true ninja methods, while extracting the cash cannot be, but getting into a position to defuse the bomb is very difficult without being seen. I think much harder than getting to the extraction point, and camping near the bomb to do a true ninja defuse is difficult when your character has glowing red dots all over, and doing a true ninja defuse won't always work if your team hasn't died yet. You can't use a smoke, and you have less control over how many people will stay alive when there's no downing mechanic, and the biggest thing is that you only have a shot every other round. Defusing requires that you're on the defending team of Search. I find it frustrating to have that much downtime in between challenge attempts. So unless you love SND and want to be playing it anyway, or are doing other SND challenges at the time, I would strongly recommend going with Heist for the challenge. I do think it's easier and a little more fun since you aren't out of it every other round. If you do want to hear some more about Search though, there is that old Black Ops 3 video I did, which is clearly outdated in some ways like the specialists, but will still have some decent advice. In summary, It ain't easy. I think you know my stance on Ninja by now. It isn't a great challenge, because to get it done efficiently, it encourages sabotaging your team and actively hoping for them to die. That's not a very healthy thing for the game mode. Like, what sucks is that a good teammate might stick by you to escort the cash. And now you've got a guy with you who's just wondering why the hell you aren't moving to the extraction point. I hate sabotaging my team like that. The challenge would be fun if it required you to extract or defuse while the enemies were still alive. You could even make it more than 5. Without the dead team part, it's fine, like with the Ninja Challenge in Modern Warfare Remastered. But no, they went the way of Black Ops 3 and World War II. I get where they're coming from with the clutch ninja play thing, that makes sense, but in practice it doesn't play well for challenge hunters and would require a massive amount of playtime in those modes if you weren't actively hunting for it. Overall though, I have to say I love Black Ops 4's challenge system, I love the mastery titles and the incentive to play all 3 main game modes. With this out of the way early, I got it done on the 14th actually, when I was too sick to record anything. I just sat there all day and grinded this out a couple days after launch. So now I'm excited to make a go at 100%. I wish you the best of luck if you're going to take this on as well, going for 100%. If you have any better ideas to complete this challenge easier, you can of course let everyone know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.